All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Now, in December of last year, okay, so 2024, we covered the whole Tim Kennedy stolen valor situation fairly extensively. I think I did about 3 or 4 videos in the coming weeks with updates and things like that. I had found clips from podcasts and interviews that he had done and article clippings that he featured on his own website, which are still there, by the way. Okay, that claim he had won awards that he had not won, had been on deployments and had gotten in engagements that he had either fabricated or just straight up not been on, and a whole bunch of other tall tales from old saga grenades Timmy. Okay, I covered his response to the whole situation as well, but recently we have got an actual update that I did think was worth covering. Now, a couple weeks ago, Tim was filling in for Brian Callen with Brendan Schaub as the co-host for the Fighter and the Kid podcast. Now, I almost did a video on just this podcast because it did kind of get brought up, but I wasn't sure that it was worth an entire video. However, recently, Tim Kennedy did finally kind of own up to the fact that he lied about his awards, so I want to just go over that, and we'll throw in the bit from the Fighter and the Kid as well, okay? Just to show how recently he was still claiming that all of the allegations were absolute bullshit. So let's get into the clips, okay?
And another like selfless behind the scenes helping people out, you know, like
stud.
When I was going through some stuff 6 months ago, one of the first dudes to reach out, him, Joe Huberman, you know, like these people that are super famous and everybody loves to listen to them, and they're even better behind the camera.
Yeah, love that.
Hey,
Most guys aren't.
Like, I don't know. You're pretty freaking amazing. Brian's amazing. Joe's amazing. I don't know. Like he's the greatest dudes are the greatest dudes. I think if you're faithful in the small things, you can be faithful at the big things.
And did you expect that when you were going through your bullshit? Did you expect the backing you'd get from those guys? You know what I'm saying?
I didn't. No, I never even thought that.
I guess I should. You wouldn't expect it, but we're like, oh, that's cool.
It's so cool.
Especially when you're going through it.
You get to find out who your friends are.
Yep.
And that was the greatest gift of all of it was, you know, like the fair weather friends, the coattail riders, the sponsors that are like, oh, I'll support Tim when he's Captain America.
Correct.
You know, but like somebody starts talking smack about him, and you know, like, oh, bring in receipts, and then you find out really who your friends are.
Yeah, man. It almost does you a favor.
I
tell it to Brian all the time. You know, Brian went through his shit. I'm like, in hindsight, he went through it, buddy. We both did. Yeah. Went through it. But
okay, now like I said, just 2 fucking weeks ago, and Tim Kennedy was still acting like these allegations were bullshit, completely false, and were just gonna go away. He even put finger quotes around the word receipts as if none were brought, okay? Which to me makes it all the more funny. It is truly, absolutely fucking hilarious that he came out with the apology that he did recently after talking about the whole situation in the way that he did on this podcast. Now, before we get to this most recent apology, in my opinion, there's something else that makes it just as hilarious, and that is that Tim Kennedy has already acknowledged and admitted to some of the things that these other veterans had brought up on their podcasts, more specifically regarding the Purple Heart that he claims he's gotten, okay? So Tim Kennedy has already admitted to lying about an award, and he acts as though it is so insane and just out of the realm of possibility that these people must be lying. So I went and got that clip from an older video that I had done on the situation. So take a look at this.
The non-Purple Heart. First of all, it's insane that you're using like a 2011 DD-214 as your document of proof. You know, it's 13 years old now. A lot of things have changed in the career since then. But one of the things that wasn't on that DD-214 is a Purple Heart. I was injured while I was in combat, and you can watch. You can go back to fights in 2003, 4, 5, and 6, and you're gonna see my neck and my back one way, and then from 2007, 8, 9, until today, you'd be like, whoa, he looks significantly different. And you're gonna notice a bunch of brown marks on my shoulder and my neck. What I didn't have is a chain of command, a direct chain of command. I was not on an ODA when I went to Afghanistan in 2008. I didn't have a team leader. I didn't have a team sergeant. I didn't have anyone putting me in for orders. When I came out of the Urizgan Valley after those ambushes, and then we made it back out of Firebase Anaconda by the grace of God and by the heroes to my left and to my right, like they're 100% the heroes in all of this. There's no one, I just wanted to stay in the fight. There was no one to put me in for any awards. There was no one there to do anything. I was a coalition asset traveling with a NATO allied partner in and out of that place. When I retire, when I'm no longer useful in the military, when I don't get to wear the uniform and the flag, which is like the greatest honor of my life, have the opportunity to be next to the men and women, the best and the brightest in this country. When that day comes, you know, and I'm sure I'm rounding the bend on it, I'll fix all that.
All right, now that was an extremely long-winded, roundabout way to say that I don't have the award I claimed I have. Okay, this video, by the way, was over 6 months ago, yet still, all the way up until about 2 weeks ago, acting like they were just insane, unfounded, false allegations, gaslighting the audience, and lying to whatever person he has in front of him, especially someone like Brendan Schaub, who he knows doesn't know much about fucking anything. Do you know what I mean? He has been speaking like this on podcasts since this whole thing happened.
Attack was coming at me from the veteran community. You know, I really got to find out who my friends were over the past 4 months.
Yeah.
It's really easy to be friends with me when I'm like, can get you tickets to a UFC fight.
Sure.
Or, you know, now if like I can bring you to Washington, D.C. and have you meet important people, like it's really easy, you know, but like 2.5 months, 3 months ago when, you know, people are calling me a liar and saying like, he didn't do all these things.
People step up.
People got to step up, and also people stepped away.
Sure.
And it was the greatest gift I could have been given was to learn who my real friends were.
Yet, he already acknowledged the guys that exposed this info were actually correct, okay? He just really picked and chose what it was he admitted to. Now, something about this clip that I just can't get over, and I don't know whether to laugh or cringe or both, or I don't fucking know, is that Tim Kennedy has had a newly found budding political career, okay? He's been at the White House for a lot of events and whatever else, and very recently was there as a quote-unquote injured veteran along with a bunch of other people that were, you know, actually injured veterans, like amputees and shit, okay? The level of absolute dickheadery that would take is just insane to me. And like I mentioned, this recent apology just makes it all the more crazy. Now, before we get to that apology, let me just play this little clip for context on what he's actually apologizing for this time around.
Never said anything about having a Purple Heart or a Bronze Star with a V device.
You sure about that?
Per the source I have here, you have a Bronze Star with a V. Is that correct?
Yep.
Do you mind telling us about what happened there and how you got that?
Oh, pretty straightforward. Like I think so. There's a bad guy, and bad guy was shooting at us, and
All right, so there it is. Up until this point, we basically just had Tim was actually very clever about how he would go about this. If you go watch my other videos on the situation, you'll know what I'm talking about. But Tim would allow other people to introduce him in a certain way, of which would include the Bronze Star with the V device, and then he just would not correct them. So he was never the one actually saying it himself. But then somebody took the time to dig up this old clip where he got asked about it in a little bit more detail. Now, to me, the most damning part about it is that he made up a story after the fact for how it happened. Had he just said, yeah, I do, and then moved on, Do you know what I mean? Said, I don't want to talk about it. He could have always played it off like, oh, I didn't hear him correctly. I didn't realize he asked about with a V device. I didn't mean that in the moment. That's my bad. But what he did was make up some fucking super vague bullshit story. Okay? And that just makes it all the more funny to me that he is now coming out with the apology that we're going to look at right now. I'm going to read that out for you guys as it's up on the screen. Okay? I want to take full and unequivocal responsibility for a serious mistake. Over the years, I made public statements and gave interviews in which I unintentionally misstated aspects of my military service. Most notably, I implied directly or indirectly, okay, a lawyer must have fucking written this, by the way, that I had been awarded the Bronze Star with valor. That is not true, and there is no excuse for it. I never received that honor, and I deeply regret ever suggesting otherwise. That kind of recognition is sacred. It represents extraordinary courage under fire, acts that risk or cost lives. To those who truly earned it, and to their families and brother-in-arms, I offer my sincere and direct apology. What I said disrespected your service, and I take full ownership of that. He must have consulted Jocko as well, okay? I was young when I stepped into the public eye, and here come the fucking excuses. I have not read this in its entirety until right now reading it with you guys, okay? So it's just, that threw me off a bit. And while I wasn't prepared for the scrutiny or pressure that came with it, that doesn't absolve me. Then why mention it? Do you know what I mean? I should have known better. Integrity is not situational, and I failed to uphold the standards I claim to respect. To the military and the veteran community, especially those who've served in combat or lost people they love, I am deeply sorry. I know I've let many of you down. You had every right to expect more of me, and I didn't live up to that. This apology is not the end. It is the beginning. I am committed to rebuilding trust through honest reflection, visible accountability, and ongoing service to the community I misrepresented myself to. I will no longer speak about my service in a way that elevates me beyond what I actually did. To me, that line right there, actually, that sentence is, I think, a lot more important than most of this apology. I will no longer speak about my service in a way that elevates me beyond what I actually did. That is that's the admission right there. Either way, let's just continue. From now on, my words will be guided by truth, humility, and respect, by the way, implying that they were not beforehand. I understand that words alone don't heal disappointment or restore trust. Only time and action will. Thank you for those who have held me accountable, and I will do my best to honor that accountability from this point forward. Written by Tim Kennedy and his lawyer and Jocko and whoever the fuck else. Now, like, this is, to me, this isn't even really an apology. This is a half-ass apology, a legal statement, because from what I've heard from some of the veteran YouTubers who are covering this a lot more extensively, is that he's actually under investigation to potentially have some credentials pulled, okay? And they were probably trying to get ahead of it to maybe preserve his newly found political career. But I just think it's absolutely fucking insane that for the last 6 months, like I said earlier, he has been gaslighting everybody, lying to people who he knows he can get away with lying to about this situation, all the way up to just a couple weeks ago while he was co-hosting on The Fighter and the Kid. And then we get this massive written half-ass apology with excuses and whatever else baked into it. Now, I want to know what you guys think about his apology, and if you think that it's worthwhile or a good step or whatever the fuck it may be. Okay, I would really like to see Tim try to get on a podcast with some of the guys that have been exposing this information and talking about it for the last 6 months, because this one instance of the award is one of like 100 things that he lied about just in one chapter. Do you know what I mean? Of his book. That's what I mean by just one chapter. But Jesus Christ, we finally have, I don't even want to say we finally have, because like the clip I showed you not all that long ago, we did have confirmation that he had lied about awards. It's just that nobody really cared as much about the Purple Heart because a Valor Award is extremely, extremely prestigious. Okay? And there are people that have done unhinged things for those awards that do not get the same kind of recognition that Tim Kennedy gets. And I honestly think that that's why this was able to go on for as long as it did, because Tim Kennedy is probably one hell of a fucking recruiter. And like I've mentioned in basically every single video I've done about Tim Kennedy, I don't understand the need or the urge or the impulse to lie about your career. You were already a Green Beret. You were already a successful UFC fighter or MMA fighter in general. I feel like you were badass enough that you could have been the recruiter you became just with that alone, without making up all these bullshit stories and awards and things like that. And to be quite honest, in the long run, I believe this damages his image a lot more than if he was to just be like, yeah, I didn't have to do anything ultra crazy, but I still was an SF guy, I still was a UFC fighter and whatever else. Now I think it does call into question a lot of things, and I am very curious to see if he will have those articles that still claim the thing he has now come clean about, if he will have them removed and whatever else, and from his Wikipedia page and the podcast appearances and all the rest of it. Okay, now that's it for now. If we get more updates, perhaps I will do another video on it. In the meantime, I would urge you guys to go check out the first 4 that I did on him, just to get a feel for the entire thing if you are not already familiar. But either way, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Like and subscribe. All that good shit, dude. It's so nice to be back after my account was hacked. I appreciate each and every one of you. Toodles. Goodbye.